Hello, everyone. Nice to have you yet again to continue our journey into this course, an introduction to English literature for Palestinian students at the English department at the Islamic University of Gaza. Again, the course introduces us to major literary movements, major literary events, major literary texts, and major literary figures in English. We understand these texts, we study them in their historical context. And again, I have to repeat this because this is a literature course, literature in its historical context, because we need to understand the relationship between history and literature. And I said this before, it's not a one-way thing. It's not people only think that literature influences history, but we here also examine how literature influences life. So how this is a mutual relationship in a way or another. We finished last time talking about Middle English. We've seen how England started to become the England. We know now how the English language was developing, how English literary figures, especially people like Geoffrey Chaucer, how they were looking for the English identity because they wanted to be special, in a way different from other European countries. Today, we move to speak about one of the major eras in the history of English literature. It's the Renaissance. In the Renaissance, we have so many things to speak about, but in general, the subtitle here reads as the Age of Shakespeare, the Age of Drama. So we'll have an introduction and see what the Renaissance means to England, to the United Kingdom, and to English literature. And then we'll talk about Shakespeare and take Hamlet as an example. Now, the Renaissance, as you can see, it is said that the Renaissance started earlier in Europe, and then, in a way, England followed up. Around 1485, that's the late 15th century to the mid-17th century is considered the Renaissance. The Renaissance means rebirth, means renewal. It's the rebirth. It's New England. It's New Britain. Now, in the book, and in most English texts, they usually introduce us to this era, the Renaissance, and they speak they say all good things about England, about the United Kingdom, about the British Empire. We hear and read all these important, fascinating discoveries, inventions, and technological, scientific advances, which all these are, in a way or another, are true. But usually these books that speak about how England became England usually forget something very important. Remember, England became, the British Empire, right? The British Empire that controlled large areas around the world. England became the most powerful country in the world. London became not only the capital of Britain, of England, but it became the most important city in the world. What does that mean? It means the English people, in a way, became richer. They discovered the new areas. They reached to different areas around the world. Again, however, when we speak about this, when English books speak about this, they usually forget two important things. And I will focus on these things. In a way, they are interchangeable. They are imperialism and colonialism. Imperialism and colonialism. What does it mean? What is imperialism? What is colonialism? Can you tell me, someone, what is imperialism or colonialism? Have you ever heard about the term colonies, colonial, colonizer? Yeah? Imperialism. Do you have any idea? Yes.
The policy extending elections.
Okay. Okay. So again, I say in a way, colonialism is part of imperialism. The British Empire, where a country generally controls another country, politically, economically, etc., etc. Now, colonialism is like an occupation. Colonize to occupy. When we speak about the British colonies in Africa, in Asia, and even some parts of America, it becomes part of the British Empire, not by right, but by force. So what happens in colonialism is that the British Empire sends its armies, sends its soldiers to occupy areas of the world in Africa and in Asia. And when they occupy, what happens to this country? What happens to Asia? What happens to Australia? What happens to India, for example, or Pakistan? Is that the British Empire takes all the good things, the raw materials, the treasures, the materials. It brings money, it brings riches to the English people in England. But what happens to the natives? What happens to the colonized? Is something that this book doesn't touch upon, and we need to pay attention to this. It means, colonialism means, if England was getting richer and richer, Africa and Asia were getting poorer and poorer. It means oppression. It means the destruction of these countries. It means that these countries are massacred. Because of the British Empire, millions and millions of people were massacred. Because of the British Empire, countries, even today, as Palestinians, we were for some time under the British mandate or colonialism. And because of the British Empire, we're still paying this heavy price. Israel gifted Palestine to the Zionists. And we're still suffering now. Most of the problems about borders in Pakistan, in India, and Kashmir, in Africa, are thanks to the British Empire. So don't forget, when you read an English book praising, again, the advancements, the achievements of the British Empire, don't ever forget the fact that the other people, the colonized, pay the heaviest price. They're killed, they're destroyed, their countries, their nations are destroyed for centuries and centuries. And as Palestinians, we still pay for this. So one interesting thing is that these new worlds that were discovered are not actually, in fact, new. Because look at America, for example, the Native Americans. There were Native Americans that the Europeans called Red Indians because they thought they were discovering India. Now, Columbus discovering Americas in 1492 is mentioned here as an achievement, right? Yeah. Something, wow, cool. Because Europeans started migrating to America and made America. But this doesn't mention the fact that tens of millions were massacred, Native Americans, just brutally destroyed and massacred.
They took their land and everything.
Their land and everything. They had their land, their lives, their futures, and everything. So that's number one. So the Renaissance is characterized, yes, by new discoveries around the world, but we know these are not new because there were people already there. The lands belonged to other people, and everything else belonged to those people. So that's number one. And then when we speak about religion during this era, we speak about Henry VIII. Now, generally in Europe, the king follows the church in the Catholic Church in Rome, the Pope. The Pope is the most important man in Europe. He was the God's spokesperson on earth. He gives blessings to the kings. The kings ask for things, ask for his permission sometimes, and he gives them his blessings, or he says no. And if he says no, it's no. Now, King Henry, whose brother died, he succeeded him. He became the King of England. He married his brother's wife. And he didn't love her, he didn't like her. And he said, okay, I want to divorce her. But can you divorce your wife in Catholicism?
No.
You can't. It's for eternity.
And you can't marry another one for the same.
Yeah, and this is again Catholicism. So what should the king do here? Should he listen to the Pope? Because England, again, remember, England was working very hard to be different, to gain its own identity, to be its own master. He said, okay, thank you, Pope. We'll have our own church. And then we started something called the Church of England. And who's the head of this church? The king. The king became the most important man in England. He was God's person, God's representative on earth. Okay? Now, when we speak about this, we speak again about the Church of England. Religion was, in a way, becoming different. And here we can speak about Catholicism, the Pope, and Protestantism. You know Protestant? He's a Protestant or a Catholic. A Protestant, from the word to protest, because they were protesting some teachings of the Catholic Church. Now, this is important to our understanding of literature and English history here, because new ways of thinking in terms of religion and God and man means new thinking about life, about how to write, how you understand life. Now, a very important point here is what is called the great chain of being. Look at this. This pyramid shape, the triangle, is what we know as the great chain of people, where people were ranked according to their importance. God is the creator, but here we have, who's here? The king. The king of England. He became God's spokesperson, the most important person, which means everything the king says, you have to obey. You can't disobey the king. You can't hurt the king. You can't trash the king. And then probably the royal family, the church people, important people, rich people, etc. And then here we have the masses, the poor people. And at the end we have insects, animals, and everything else. So man became important. But who's the most important man? The king. He became God's speaker, God's spokesperson on earth. So this is in terms of religion. In terms of thought, 3. Again, everything is advancing. New ideas, new thoughts about life, about man, about the relationship between man and God and man. Now, this person, his name is Erasmus, he's a Dutch thinker and philosopher. He came with this idea that is now known as humanism. Humanism from human. It's a concept that focuses on man and woman, okay? Man as the center of the world. Man, not anything else, became the most crucial person in the world. Like, people started to realize that man is not only because of his intelligence, but also because of man's ability to distinguish bad from good, or good from bad, or evil from good. Man is intelligent, man is smart, man is the center of the world, can control his fate in a way, and can choose to do good and not to do bad. Now again, Erasmus and his statement, this is a paraphrase, that man is the center of the world. This is the concept of humanism. Man as the center of the world, as the most important center figure in the world, more important than any other creatures. In addition, it talks about man's ability to change to the better, to choose the good rather than the bad or evil. Now, if we speak about changes in politics, in economics, intellectualism, and life, and religion, and God, necessarily there is what? Change in literature. So, whether literature is adapting to include more characters and more themes and more issues, or life is influencing literature, or literature influencing life, is again a matter of discussion. Sometimes it's not easy to follow, but again, literature is so important that it also makes a difference. It also creates a difference and makes a difference. This is our major point. Literature during the Renaissance, and when we speak about literature at that time, we speak about the most important genre. Remember, so far we only have poetry, and then some drama, the miracle drama, remember, from the Bible, okay, in the Middle Ages. And now drama became more important because there were theaters and people would go pay money to watch actors act on the stage, etc. But don't forget that drama was written also in verse. Here, it was written in poetry. Shakespeare's plays are mainly written in poetry. Don't forget this. So it's still poetry, but the major difference between poetry and drama is that poetry is written to be to be sung, like songs in a way. But drama was written to be acted on stage. Please don't forget this. When you think of Shakespeare and dramatists of that time, they wrote their plays to be acted, performed on stage. This is important. That's why sometimes you love the play more when you watch it. Because it comes to life. It wonderfully comes to life when it is performed on stage. So Shakespeare. What do you know about Shakespeare?
He's a great writer.
A great writer, okay.
He writes plays.
He wrote plays and poems. What do you know about Shakespeare? What is the impression you already have about Shakespeare?
He wrote 37 plays.
Okay.
4 tragedies. Hamlet, Macbeth.
More than 4. But tragedies, comedies, and histories, there are other divisions, but we'll come to this later on. What do you know about Shakespeare? Forget about the slides
He
here.
wrote Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet, King Lear. The most famous line in English history, in English literature, is to be or not to be from Hamlet. What else do you know about Shakespeare?
His style of writing was a sonnet, which is a poetry.
He wrote the sonnets. He wrote more than 150 sonnets. 154, some say 52 sonnets. What is a sonnet? We'll have one whole class for the sonnet. 14-line poems. Sonnets, please.
He moved to London to become actor.
Okay, good. So originally he wasn't born in London. But he moved to London because remember, London was the most important city in the world. So he moved to London because London is the city of culture, of literature, of politics, of economics, of money, of literature, of art, of the theater, of success.
I know that he became more famous because when Queen Elizabeth saw one of his tragedies, and then the people were saying, wow, like...
Even the Queen would watch some of his plays. He has his own theater later on called The Globe. So let's talk a little bit about Shakespeare. Listen, now Shakespeare was not born in London. But around the age of 20, 18, he moved. He got married to a woman older than him. He had some kids. Some of them died in their infancy. And then he moved to London because he wanted to act. He wanted to do something, to write literature, to be part of the important world. Now, Shakespeare, it is said that he went to a grammar school where he learned some grammar, language, probably he read some Latin, Greek mythology, Greek literature probably, learned maybe some rhetoric. But he didn't go to university, he didn't go to college, so he wasn't a fancy rich boy whose parents can send to university to learn. And this is something we'll talk about in a bit. Now Shakespeare, in his 37 plays or so, is said to be one of the most important people throughout history. He's important, he's everywhere. His books were translated, his plays were translated into almost every language around the world. Everybody knows Shakespeare. Everybody hears about Shakespeare. Whatever you want to talk about, you find Shakespeare. Business people quote Shakespeare. Politicians quote Shakespeare. Teachers use Shakespeare. Shakespeare's everywhere. It's not only about, we'll talk about this also, not only about his stories. His stories are amazing, wonderful. The plot, the tragedies, the people, the characters. Now, in Shakespeare, the stories are usually taken from some book he read. But it's the language, the depiction, it's bringing the people and bringing the events alive to us. We watch Shakespeare now, almost 400 years later, and we feel that he belongs to this age. We feel that he is part of our life today. The way he talks to us, the way he discusses his issues, the concerns, his characters, he touches our hearts. We'll see Hamlet for example here. Now, the point about Shakespeare being one of the most, if not the most important figure in world literature is important because that's why we're studying Shakespeare here. He's a canonical writer. He belongs to all times and all places. As students of the English department here, we need to study Shakespeare. To start, maybe I know some of you might have a bad impression about Shakespeare for a reason or another. Please don't. Try to read quotes for. If you love anything about any topic you have in mind, I don't know, friendship, sisters, brothers, mothers, life, teachers, writing, language, war, battles, heroes. Just look up Shakespeare quotes on war, and you'll enjoy. You'll be amazed. Shakespeare talks about everything in the world. Sometimes, if you want to look about information about the relationships, Shakespeare is there. About kings, Shakespeare is there. If you want to quote a topic, I don't know, like there are references to the planets, to the stars, to chemistry, to translation, to teaching, to thinking, to philosophy. People are amazed how learned Shakespeare was and is. That's why some people doubt. They say, can a boy from outside London who only went to a grammar school be this knowledgeable? Yes. And we'll talk about this conspiracy. People say, no, Shakespeare is not Shakespeare. We'll see this in a bit. So we have 37 plays. We have more than 150 sonnets. He's translated to almost every main language around the world. He's quoted. Shakespeare was constantly experimenting because literature, for example, the sonnet came from Europe, from Italy. But he changed something. He added something. He doesn't only imitate. He takes and he adapts. Now, talking about Shakespeare, the man himself, who is Shakespeare? This is, by the way, one of his famous pictures. Some people say, no, this is not Shakespeare, and I'll show you another picture later on. If you remember Muammar al-Qaddafi of Libya, he said Shakespeare is originally an Arab man. His name is Sheikh Zubair. Because Sheikh is the same as Sheikh. And Shakespeare is Zbair. Sheikh Zubair. Sheikh Zubair. Could an Arab man travel to England, learn the language, and be this efficient, this professional, this profound? We don't know. It's very doubtable, unlikely, but it's interesting that people around the world want to claim Shakespeare for themselves. Now, some people say Shakespeare isn't Shakespeare. Shakespeare is just a name because we don't know much about his life. Some claim that a guy named Francis Bacon. Others claim Christopher Marlowe. We study Christopher Marlowe. Shakespeare is Christopher Marlowe because Christopher Marlowe died young and he disappeared. So some people say, no, he didn't die. He just pretended to be someone else. And other people believe he is Edward de Vere of Oxford. This theory is interesting. Those people, it's called the Oxford School. The Oxford School.
It's a very famous university.
Oh, of course. So they claim that Shakespeare is someone who went to Oxford. That there's no way only a grammar school boy could write this. It has to be someone who went to university like Oxford, knowledgeable, with a great background, a noble person with knowledge and experience. This is interesting. Some people support this wholeheartedly. But this theory has some kind of elitism, condescending. It shows arrogance because they believe that only important people, royal family, elite people, educated people can produce this amazing literature. See this? Okay? And some people even believe that Shakespeare could be one of the royal family, if not the King James himself. I don't know. But some people in the royalty did not want to be attached with producing plays because this, in a way, belongs to other people. And another interesting theory about who Shakespeare is, there was an article in Haaretz probably 7 years ago, wondering if Shakespeare is an Italian Jewish woman. So not only Italian, but also not only a Jew, but also a woman. Still interesting. Many people want to claim Shakespeare for them. Shakespeare for them. Some people, I had a discussion with this interesting guy who believed that Shakespeare could probably be a group of people. Because, again, there is profound knowledge about the universe, the stars, the planets, peoples, histories, other cultures, language, chemistry, science, everything. So probably a group of people in a way, and one with an amazing language, skills, put this together. We don't know. We don't know. This sounds silly, but for us here, we don't care who Shakespeare is. We'll take him as Shakespeare, the man, the person. But more important than Shakespeare and his life and what he did is the literature he's produced. Thank you very much. The text itself. Because sometimes it's funny. Every couple of decades they say, this play was half written by Marlowe. This sonnet that we thought that Shakespeare wrote was written by someone other than Shakespeare, or vice versa. So if the author changes, if somebody realizes that Shakespeare is a guy from Shuja'iyya, is someone from Gaza who wrote all these wonderful things, who left Gaza because of a siege back then and went to England and became the most famous person in England, still the text is more important. It's interesting to know something about the life of this person. Now, let's study in brief again Shakespeare's major literary work. Most important play. It is Hamlet. The play is Hamlet. Let's see the character map here, or probably before we do the character map, listen to me. So, okay, we agree that Shakespeare is everywhere, all around the world. Now, look at this interesting critic who said, talking about Hamlet, and this is only Hamlet, one of 37 plays, and let alone the sonnets. He said, any time of the day, again indicating how important Hamlet is, any time of the day, someone somewhere around the world is talking about Hamlet, reading Hamlet, studying Hamlet, watching Hamlet, researching Hamlet, quoting Hamlet, cursing Hamlet, adapting Hamlet, writing about Hamlet, answering questions about Hamlet, thinking of Hamlet, dreaming of Hamlet, I don't know, anything, like so many things. And here, we are here at the end of the world, in Gaza, besieged and occupied, we're studying Hamlet. We're studying Shakespeare because of how significant this person. Hamlet was a prince, but he belongs to every time and every place. Hamlet, we'll talk about this in a bit. Hamlet has modern thoughts and ideas that even today, in the 21st century, we can relate to. His problems are problems of today and every day. Hamlet is a prince, but he's also an individual. When we read Hamlet, the relationship between him and his dad, his uncle, his mom, his friend, his girlfriend, his enemies, his everything, oh my God, it's like, it's part of us. And that's why many people identify with Hamlet. Hamlet was performed all over the world. And it's interesting how many people might adapt Hamlet. Sometimes in Africa, for example, they would take Hamlet and make the character, like a black African, or in China, Chinese man. And there is, I think, a movie, I can't remember the name, where Hamlet is a 21st century or 20th century businessman from New York. But again, he has to come face to face with all these problems of the modern life. Now, Hamlet is a modern person, a man who goes to University of Wittenberg. By the way, the play takes place in Denmark. The story could have happened in a way or another, but Shakespeare reproduced it. So again, Hamlet is a prince. He is a student. He's a son. He's supposed to succeed the throne, and then he gets the news that his father died, passed away. He comes back sad, and mournful, and sorrowful, and then his uncle becomes the king. Hamlet does not succeed his father. His uncle becomes the king, and his mother, Hamlet's mother, marries his uncle. Wasn't allowed at that time, But because this is the king, nobody can talk to the king. Nobody can say no to the king. Remember, he's the top of the pyramid. And Hamlet is so sad. And all of a sudden, someone tells Hamlet, hey, Hamlet, there's a ghost that looks like your dad. Hamlet is a university student, as we don't believe in ghosts. Do you? No. We don't, because they don't exist. But because he was desperate, he goes out with his friend Horatio, and he comes face to face with the ghost of his father. And he talks to him alone, and he tells them, I was killed by your uncle, and your mom kind of knew about this. And Hamlet was like, oh, prophetic soul, I knew there's something wrong. What's the plan? Kill the king.
To be the king.
To kill the king. Revenge. But again, this is a modern person, a man of the world, a man who goes to university. Seeking revenge belongs to the past. If you kill somebody who kills you, in modern life, you go to court now. You go to court, you go to the police, or whatever represents the police here. So what happens is that after a long time of Hamlet thinking and hesitating and okay, to do this or not to do this, he kills. Okay, Hamlet, remember, falls in love with, or is in love with Ophelia. Ophelia. Okay? But Ophelia's father, Polonius, and brother Laertes tell Ophelia not to love Hamlet. They are in love. They're a really cool couple. But because the woman was weak, was controlled, was by the parents, by the society, she says, okay, I'll obey my father. So sad, so heartbreaking. We feel sorry for Hamlet because people should stand by him. How much do we blame Ophelia? How much do we blame her parents? Is an issue of discussion here. And Hamlet, in an act of rash, accidentally kills Ophelia's father. Yeah, he thinks it was the king, was hiding behind some curtain, and he stabs him. Oh, and he dies. And after that, Laertes is out. Ophelia, after that, in a way, goes crazy, and then she kills herself or dies accidentally. Laertes comes back, and the king, Claudius, tries to, get rid of Hamlet, and they agree on a duel. Now, before this, it was the moment of Hamlet to be or not to be. That is the question. Because Hamlet was hesitant. Should I belong to the old age or should I belong to the modern age? What should I do? Should I kill the king? Can I kill the king? Can the king be killed? Even if the king is a murderer, it wasn't easy to think about this. To die, to sleep. Should I kill myself? Should I just commit suicide? What should I do? Hesitancy is a theme here. Deliberation. To be or not to be, that is the question. And then they agree on a duel. In the old ages, if people had a problem or a dispute, they resolve this by a duel. So if I steal your land, and you say, hey, bring my land back, I say, okay, let's duel. So if I kill you, the land is mine, basically, in simplistic terms. If I kill you, it means the land belongs to me. Now, Laertes and Hamlet agree on a duel. Because the king, King Claudius, Hamlet's stepfather, Hamlet's uncle, Hamlet's king, wants to get rid of Hamlet. He soaks, with the help of Laertes' sword with deadly poison. And he also brings a glass of wine for Hamlet, and he puts poison inside the cup. So they're fighting heroically, both of them, and then Laertes cuts Hamlet, and Hamlet, in a way, takes the sword and stabs Laertes. And then Laertes probably realizes he's wrong in a way, tells Hamlet, you're dead. The sword is poisoned. Your uncle did this. During this, or before this a little bit, Hamlet's mother wants to drink the wine that her husband prepared for Hamlet. And he says, no, don't drink. And for the first time, she decides to disobey him. It's interesting how she proves herself, but when she does so, like Ophelia, she dies. She says, no, I am my own master in a way. And she drinks the poison. She dies. And Hamlet, when he knows that story, he takes the sword and he stabs his uncle. He doesn't think, he doesn't hesitate. There's no to be or not to be here. There is action. Hamlet dies. Laertes dies. Ophelia dies. Polonius dies. Gertrude, his mom, dies. Almost all main characters die. That's why Hamlet is a tragedy. It's a tragedy where all the main characters die. However, in Hamlet there is hope for the future. His friend, best friend, Horatio, is still alive, and Hamlet tells him, "Tell my story." In a way, if this is a novel, the narrator is Horatio, and then a new king is crowned. And that's the story of Hamlet. It's a tragedy. But if you think this is cool, the story, you need to read the language. Really beautiful, really amazing. So many. I'll be posting some quotes on Facebook. They are optional, but all we need here is to be or not to be. So this is the character map. This is Hamlet. He's the center, and then the ghost and the skull. So many good things there. So why Hamlet? Hamlet, again, Hamlet the person. When I don't use inverted commas, it means the character. Hamlet is a man of modern concerns, love, duty, revenge, relationships, brotherhood, friendship, etc. The struggle between the old and the young is there. Young Hamlet and the old system. Young Hamlet and old Hamlet. Many, until this very day, identify with him. When you read Hamlet, you'll find some of you in Hamlet. He looks like, I usually say, Hamlet, in a way, could be like a Palestinian young man, living under occupation with the society, the rules, and the siege. We'll think about this. Hamlet is a tragedy because almost everybody dies at the end. So sad, but there's hope for the future. Now, this is the to be or not to be quote. This is a soliloquy. Basically, it's a soliloquy. What is a soliloquy? You know, solo, when we say solo, okay, solo, soliloquy. Soliloquy means solo. Originally, it means I talk to myself. Soliloquy is a literary device, a theatrical device from dramatical device, where one of the characters, mainly, sometimes or usually the main character, is alone, that's solo, on the stage. On the stage. What does he do? He talks to himself. Usually we do this all the time. Now I'm sure some of you are talking to yourselves in mind. But here, because this is supposed to be heard by the audience. The audience, the people in the audience are very important. They're part of the drama. So in a way, he speaks his mind out, shows us his inner conflict, what's going on in his mind. But he doesn't do it. In movies and TV shows, sometimes it's done with a voice-over. The character doesn't move his or her lips, but we hear the voice. This is a voice-over. But here, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of trouble, and by opposing in them to die, to sleep. When Hamlet does this soliloquy and other 6 or 7 major soliloquies, he talks to the audience directly. What does that indicate? What does that mean? How important is the soliloquy for the audience and for the play? Can you tell? Like, let's assume this is a stage. I'm only all alone on the stage. And all of a sudden, instead of just keeping talking with other people before, I come closer in a way to the audience and I speak to the people next to me, look them in the eye like this. What does this make the people I come closer to feel? How does it feel to them?
They will know the struggle you're having in mind. And
very good.
They will feel what you're feeling.
So they will know, try to understand the struggle, and probably they will feel some of this. It's personal. Well, like he comes closer to you. He becomes your friend. It's like someone whispering in your ear, telling you his secrets, his conflicts. Don't we like people who tell us secrets more?
Yes.
In a way, we love them. Wow, they trust us. We have to share, to feel probably sorry for them. Now, the soliloquy is important because it makes the audience part of the play. It attracts the audience, and the audience, the people, they identify, like they feel, oh my God, this is like me. I have similar fears or concerns or emotions to express. In Shakespeare, we have soliloquies everywhere, mainly in tragedies. In Hamlet, we have like 7 main soliloquies. There's another thing we'll talk about here. It's an aside. We'll talk about this. Let's just wait a bit. Okay, so again, what is a soliloquy? It's a dramatic device when the actor is all alone on stage and directs his or her speech to the audience. What is the importance of the soliloquy? To share feelings, to attract the audience, to make them grab attention, make them identify with you, feel, understand. Now, the aside is also a literary device, a theatrical, dramatic device. An aside is usually short, one-liner, one sentence. But the soliloquy is generally long. In a soliloquy, the actor is all alone. Okay?
Yes.
But in an aside, there are other actors. Again, in an aside, there are other actors. What happens here is that in an aside, there are other people here, and the character takes an aside. Like I'm talking to someone here, he does this, and he says something. Okay? So what happens? Let me say this again. In a soliloquy, it's usually a long speech. The actor is alone. In an aside, short, one sentence, and there are other actors on the stage who are not supposed to hear. Like you say something, okay, I'll do this, okay, I'll meet you outside or something. Like directing in a way that talk to the audience, but not to the other characters. The significance is almost the same, but the soliloquy is deeper, more profound. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous time, of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing in them. We're focusing on this, okay? The most important line of verse in English literature. This is the soliloquy and the aside. And finally, I'll stop here. This is Shakespeare's The Globe. I'm not sure if this is very clear out there. Look here, this is the stage. This is the stage. And these are the people near the stage that can talk to them. If you are rich enough, you can pay more money and you sit here above. Here you're usually standing. This is not the globe itself, but something similar to it. So this is the stage. People are very close. So the soliloquy is significant. You pay 1 penny, I don't know. But if you are rich, you can sit above and look down, VIP, if you are a royalties or something. And finally, this is again Shakespeare, a famous picture. Look at the ring here, the earring. And this is the picture that has been recently discovered, where people say this is the real Shakespeare. Who is the real Shakespeare? Sheikh Zubair, Marlowe, Bacon, an Italian Jewish woman, a guy from Gaza? We don't know. We're not sure. We don't care. It's good to know, but we don't care. All we care is about the texts, the plays, and the sonnets. Thank you very much. We'll stop here. If you have questions, please do ask.